everybody. This is a lecture. Actually, you must, all of you being from theatre, must have heard about Mr. Habib Tanveer. So, Raza Foundation had started a memorial lecture in his name a few years back. This was the 7th one that I gave in Delhi with Habitat Center just last month. This is about Marathi theatre. The original title, I must confess, was Contemporary Marathi Theatre and Challenges Before It. But the organizer, Mr. Ashok Bajpai, felt that it is too dull a title, so nobody would come to listen. So he changed it to What Haunts Contemporary Marathi Theatre Today. It's more dramatic. I assure you the talk won't be that dramatic. It will be quite intellectual and dull. So let me start. So I don't think many of you are exposed to either my theatre or contemporary Marathi theatre in general. This exchange on national level in the field of theatre between the different regions, which was prevalent before 1970s or during 1970s, has ceased to exist, more or less. It seems as if no significant theatre is produced after people like Tendulkar, Karnad, Badal Babu, Mohan Rakesh, etc. I do not think that it is true, and to believe that this exchange should restart. Even if we grant that for our moment that the quality of theatre all over India has dropped a bit after 1980s, it is never the case that all talent suddenly vanishes into thin air at a point of time. So there must be some reason behind the condition that theatre finds itself in now, and I am sure that all of us who are concerned about theatre and would like to start some discourse on it. I have been making some efforts in this direction with the help of similar-minded people like my senior friend Mr. Shamik Bandyopadhyay in Bengal and Mr. Akshara in Karnataka over the last few months. This lecture is a continuation of the same. So I will be talking about Marathi theatre for about last 3.5 decades, that is theatre after 1985 or 1990. I will start with the conditions that theatre has been dealing with and try to make meaning of what theatre is trying to make meaning of during this period, and then I will come to how some of my own plays try to deal with them, maybe 3 or 4 as an example. In the evening maybe we will talk about a few other Marathi writers and Marathi directors. Secondly, I will speak only about experimental theatre, not about commercial theatre. You must be knowing that there is huge body of commercial theatre also in Marathi, because I am not exposed enough to the commercial theatre, and not because it is not important. But at the same time, I would also like to make it clear that I do not accept any sharp compartmentalization between experimental and the commercial. So what I will be talking about is theatre which can be loosely termed as experimental or serious theatre or socio-political theatre, you may say. So after, so I will read out, I will be able to keep myself in time, otherwise I will go on talking. So I know it is not very interesting or it is not entertaining to read out a lecture, public lecture. But if you want to be entertained, please see my plays or read my novels. I assure you they are more entertaining. So after this opportunity-free advertisement, I would like to start by pointing out that the conditions in the period that I am going to talk about, that is after 1995 or 1985, have uncanny resemblance with the conditions not only in Maharashtra but I think in all over India that theatre faced between the period between 1920s and 1960s, that is nearly 60 years earlier. There are 3 major similarities, and the first is both these periods came after the so-called golden periods in theatre. The earlier golden period in Marathi theatre was between 1880 and 1920. You might have heard about Khadilkars and Gadkaris and about Sangeet Natak and all that thing. And this period that I'll be talking about today comes after the so-called golden period between 1965 and 1985. You must have heard about Tendulkars and Elkunchwars and Arekar and Gopu Deshpande from Maharashtra, and then from Bengal, Girish Karnad from Karnataka and all. The second similarity is both these periods faced practical commercial challenges on huge proportions. The earlier period from 1920s or 1930s faced the challenge from talkie. Alamara came in 1931. So many of the theatre places, theatre performing places, even in Pune, were just broken down and converted into cinema theatres. All the middle classes are the supporters of theatre everywhere, so they turned to cinema. And the period that that I will be talking about now faced, all of us know, color TV from 81 to hundreds of private OTT channels now, YouTube, easy access to films, internet, social media and all that. But more than these two first similarities, the third more important paradigm shift is in the socio-political conditions in these two periods. Say from 1920s or around 1920 to 1960, if you look around in this around 40 years, to just list a few of the changes, there were two world wars, Marxist revolution was there, Gandhi and Ambedkar came to India and new era in politics started where mass movements were there. I must tell you that theatre in Maharashtra before 1920s were driven by Lokmanya Tilak and all, and there was huge body of political theatre in Maharashtra. After Gandhi's entrance, this entirely stopped because people theatre. I mean, it was said that now we are. When I started writing theatre was publicized through newspapers. And Tilak was Lokmanya Tilak, Agarkar, you must have heard their names. They have started newspapers. And one of our major playwrights, Varirkar, had written in one of his plays that I advertised the newspapers through my theatre. So it was that shift. So after Gandhi came in or Ambedkar came in, huge participation, direct participation into politics started happening. So theatre started taking a backseat as far as and politics is concerned. The rise of America, Cold War, colonial era coming to an end nearly all over the world, formation of two opposing radical organizations, Communist Party of India and RSS in 1925. Country got freedom accompanied by horrible bloodshed in partition. We can go on enlisting such massive changes. I will come to the changes after 1985 later, but the changes were equally paradigmatic. Theatre or any art faces a difficulty in making meaning of such paradigm shifts and how to depict it. It has to develop different forms and tactics. We obviously know theatre of the absurd coming after or during the period between two world wars, etc., etc. But allow me to start with a few words about the golden period, the so-called golden period between 1965 and 1985, whose baggage the theatre of today has to carry on his back, and is one of the issues that it is haunted by. Any art is bound to pose the socio-political conditions. It's a truism, one need not say that. The period around 1965 was a period when a new nation was coming of age. There were many hopes and equal number of disenchantments about what had happened in the first 2 decades after independence. This is precisely why it is a period full of new movements, from Marxist to Dalit to feminist in India, and a new energy associated with them. And simultaneously, there was plethora of new thoughts, isms and movements that had developed in Europe in the recent past around 2 world wars, and they were available types to follow. from surrealism to Dadaism to existentialism to all those isms, absurdism. For example, Dalit Panther movement, which was very strong in Maharashtra, was obviously based on Black Panther movement in US. So I will come back to these prototypes later. Society was far more homogeneous then than it is today. Many young people in high spirits with shabnam bags or jholas on their shoulders were hoping for revolutions of all kinds. This was a wonderful breeding ground for a new kind of art, literature, painting, cinema, architecture, everything, and theatre was no exception. It is interesting to note that the two most important Marathi experimental plays that changed the course of Marathi theatre, you must have heard, I think, of both these plays, Gashiram Kotwal and Mahanirvan. They came in 1972 and 1974 respectively. The two most important Hindi commercial films, Diwar and Sholay, which did the same for the commercial films, came in 1975, exactly the same period. Two such films in parallel cinema in Hindi, Ankur and Nishant, came in 1974 and 75. The first poetry collection, Gol Pitha, by arguably the greatest Marathi Dalit poet Namdev Dhasa, came in 1973. All of them were not only good, all these things were good, they were very good, but good things have happened in the past as well. What was important is that they were different, very different, they were new into inverted commas. This was not only a coincidence. There is no doubt that in Marathi, fresh and vivacious theatre was produced in this period. And this came after a dark period for theatre, as I already said, so it was even more effective. All this was very new to us. We cannot expect such newness now for a long time to come. At least not till artificial intelligence takes over. I will come back to it at the end. And I, for one, am not at all enthusiastic about that day. There are a few issues that we need to remember though, which point to the limitations of this goldenness also, the so-called golden period. And for one, this theatre in Maharashtra was mainly a middle-class, upper-caste affair. Theatre has always been middle-class activity, with the exceptions of Dalits and workers' theatre movements, including the one that I am going to talk about here. The only difference is that middle classes of today are actually more socially inclusive and diverse than they were in the 1970s. So in the 70s, these middle classes who had interest in theatre were more limited. Naturally, these were not plays which reached millions. Did they reach even the middle classes in the substantial terms and bring about some serious social upheavals like Ibsen's plays did, even in that limited space? The answer is in the negative. Apart from exceptional plays like Gashiram Kotwal, most of the and there is a reason why it became popular also, but we need not go into that. Most of the experimental plays in Marathi did not go beyond a few dozen shows, maybe 20, 30 shows. And secondly, these plays were called contemporary classics, and even now that nostalgia lingers. In fact, is made to linger by a particular class of audience. But not only were many of these plays severely criticized even by their contemporaries, many of them have lost their sheen quite fast and look rather ordinary now. There was a huge criticism in Maharashtra that Tendulkar's plays are not plays at all. It was not theatre. I have read Tendulkar's handwritten letters saying or claiming that they are plays, that it is theatre, it is new theatre, etc., etc., etc. So this term of contemporary classic itself is a misnomer. What do you mean by contemporary classics? Classics have to evolve over time. I mean, there is nothing like a contemporary classics, but all of them were called contemporary classics. And so though I reiterate that some of these plays produced in this era were really good plays, even great plays, this iconization and its nostalgia has been a huge hurdle for the theatre which flourished after 1985. This theatre of 1970s set a norm for not only what is good but also what is theatrical. What is theatrical? What is theatre? It is said that today, that is after 1985-1990, golden period in Marathi theatre got over. The next generation is failing to reach the bars set by the golden period. Even if we accept this as true, a point arises which illustrates how writers are bound to the social conditions of that period. Writers like Elkunchwar, Arekar, G.P. Deshpande, who belong to this golden period, not only belong to, but they created this golden period, kept on the writing after 1985, after 1990, and were in their early or later 40s then, so in their very productive prime. For that matter, even Tendulkar, who was much older, was actively writing till 2008. Why did these writers produce plays in the latter period which were no match for their older periods? Why no Ashiram after 1985? Nothing like that. Why no Mahanirvan after that? For that matter, that they themselves will accept, and they do accept, or they have accepted, that many new writers wrote and are writing plays better than what they are doing after 1985 or 1990s. And so it brings me to the conditions that emerged after 1985 or 1990, which I claim was a paradigm shift from the past. Now I will start with some conditions which obviously all of us know, but I want to take a different track, so I have to mention them to start with. I'll list only the most glaring examples here, which all of us know, as I said, like collapse of Soviet Union, which in a sense sidelined the left altogether and supported the idea that end of ideologies and even history was here to stay. Globalization and opening up, etc., came at the same time. We all know this. What I wish to highlight is that this globalization was essentially paired with capitalism, and that to neo-capitalism. And that is more significant. Just try to imagine globalization in a socialistic framework, and the importance of this pairing will be evident. Equally importantly, globalization is not only of labor and capital, but also of cultures, which has created more fragmentation. I would like to make it clear that I am all for multiculturalism. But for multiculturalism to succeed, one needs to have extraordinary levels of tolerance and extraordinary levels of acceptance of the other culture, and that has vanished. This all is talked about to a certain extent. I mean, we all talk about it all the time. What is not paid enough attention to and is what it does to an individual and to theatre. This multiple identity, this creates multiple unconnected identities of an individual. All of us have a plethora of identities now. Did an individual not have multiple identities before globalization? She did. But the sheer number of such identities has increased to such a level that it makes qualitative difference now. Even more important is that the fact that these identities derive their validity from different and unconnected frameworks and norms, making the situation absurd. As dialogues and the communication depend on the superimposition of identities, if I am speaking to you, then my identities and your identities may be 10 each or whatever, they have to superimpose at least to a certain extent. If these identities are vast and if they are absolutely unconnected, then dialogue and the communication breaks down. The result of this is that the dialogue becomes extremely difficult. So RSS and the communists at one point, say 10 years back, both insisted on the Swadeshi, but the meaning they had in mind was totally different. When RSS said the Swadeshi and the communists said the Swadeshi, they meant very different things. In one of my plays, when any of the characters utters a key sentence or a dialogue, he or she follows it up with 9 sentences of a monologue in an effort to explain his or her specific meaning. I mean, if I say something, then many a times I have to go on giving defenses. I mean, this is a vast change. I don't mean it was not there, but I mean that it is different. But I mean, I have to go on giving many defenses because dialogue has become extremely difficult.
Would you like to give an example?
I will come to that. When I come and explain the play itself, I will be talking about that play itself a bit. Yeah. And theatre faces obviously one more problem. It is not only made up of dialogues between characters, as is obvious. It also depends on dialogue between many people who create it, because it's a group activity. It's not like writing a novel or creating a painting. There is also a worse outcome due to this anxiety produced by these multiple unrelated identities. A right wing takes advantage of this by creating a false unified identity like Hindu, Islam or regionalism, etc., which is in opposition of some such other identity. This creates a pseudo sense of belonging and communication, but what really ensues is hatred and false ironical bipolar world, which we see happening all over the world. This is obviously worse for any free activity, obviously including theatre. An equally important thing was the changes in technology at an extraordinary and unprecedented level, from computers to PCs to mobiles to internet to artificial intelligence. And this was at a time when not all in India even had an electrical connection. This fragmented the society in India. I mean, when we speak about contemporary art, when we speak about contemporary theatre, is there anything like contemporary India? India lives in many different times simultaneously. Just 20 miles outside or 20 kilometers outside Bombay is one of the most backward Adivasi areas in Maharashtra. So this fragmented the society even more. This process continues with ever increasing pace. Even if we concentrate on the section of society to which these changes really reached, the changes this new technology brings about, not only in the communication but in the process of thinking itself, are immense, and the changes in the field of social psychology and interpersonal relations just get tagged to them without us either noticing or being in the control of them. This process was supposed to make the world flat, creating more equality and easy communication. What in fact has happened is the exact opposite. And the technology has become so unavoidable now that a poor person may not be able to have enough food or 2 meals, but needs to have a mobile phone to survive, to get an OTP, even to get the monetary help that the populist governments offer. This brought about 3 most important changes in the social reality. The fragmentation of the individual and the society. 2, extreme complexity, which is multipolar, and that is the key word. Multipolar is the key word here. And the rise of the right-wing intolerance and majoritarianism all over the world, including India, which to some extent is worse than the dictatorship, as well as the fundamentalism and terrorism. The social reality itself has become so bizarre, spectacular and violent that art has lost its bearing. We talk about theatre and violence. The society has become so violent. Allow me to give one example. Many of you might be knowing this already. Any art or any artist expects to make some effect on the audience. I mean, one theatre or one art piece can never change the society or never bring about a revolution, but every artist or every writer wants to have some effect. A musical performance by great German musical composer and conductor Stockhausen of Hamburg Philharmonic Orchestra was organized towards the end of 2001. Just before the event, the world saw the terrorist attack on Twin Towers. Stockhausen came on stage. He took the baton in his hand as usual, with his back to the audience, waited for a minute. He put the baton down and left, abandoning the performance that had cost millions of dollars, creating huge uproar. The justification he gave of his behavior later was, on the background of this violent spectacle, there is no meaningful statement or effect possible through art anymore. And this does not end here. It is stretched even further. Even wars are televised as spectacles. Many Americans saw the Iraq war as prime-time series. Syria, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine and Gaza are no different. Now let me come back to the issue of complexity of the present conditions. This is not to say that life before 1985 was not complex. but that the society was more coherent and issues were more unilinear. A few years back, Tendulkar once asked me, why do you young writers create, that time I was more young than I am now, young writers create so much noise about the complexity. Do you mean to say that we did not deal with the complexities? I gave him the same answer. Sure, sir, life has always been complex, but now it has become multilinear. This is the bigger difference. I remember he had nodded his consent. Human beings have become lonely and empty, and what is worse, humans don't even seem to regret it anymore. On the contrary, this is being celebrated. In an era of virtual reality, reality seems to have become a myth itself. How should theatre, which is a alive medium, survive in this kind of a mythical reality? Let's have a peek. I mean, what do I mean by this? So let's have a peek at lives of three important writers from three different eras, which will serve as an example of this change. The first example is from the life of a major Oriya writer from colonial period, Fakir Mohan Senapati. He was born in 1843, and at the time of his birth he was Hindu. Obviously, he was named Braja Mohan Senapati. And in his childhood, he used to be very ill, and his grandmother took him to different medical doctors or whatever were available at that time. When that did not help, she took him to many Hindu saints and Hindu temples. When that did not work, she took him to the Muslim saints. And they said that, okay, we will make him well, but if we do that, you will have to convert him to Islam. Now, by chance, he did get well, and his health improved. But then the grandmother had a second thought about converting him to Islam. So then they came to a conclusion. They had a meeting. They came to a conclusion that his name, as a symbol, would be changed from Braj to Fakir Mohan. There would be no change in the religion, and for 8 days in a year he would go in the Muharram, beg for alms and everything, and those alms will be handed over to the fakirs. So there was a religious tension. There was tension, but there was some meeting ground. People were able to meet. They were able to communicate. The second example is of Vijay Tendulkar. You may know, you may not know, but at least two of his plays, even more than two of his plays, caused huge social upheaval. I mean, Gashiram Kotwal was attacked by Brahmins as well as Shiv Sena. Sakaram Binder was attacked by the cultural police and all that. But it was easy to understand. I mean, there were two sides which believed in two different specific ideologies. They were fighting. He was attacked. A simple solution was to find out that there was a problem of a particular caste, Oknas Brahmins, about Gashiram Kotwal, that Nana Sahib Fadnavis, the main character, was not so bad, and Tendulkar has twisted the character because of some caste issues that he has, because he is not a Oknas Brahmin. So what the solution that they found out was that a note would be read out before the play, saying that this is not a historical play, we are only playing a part of it. Nana Sahib Fadnavis might have been a good politician, we are only talking about a part of it. And all of us know that Gashiram Kotwal is still going on in thousands of shows. Same thing happened about Sakaram Binder. So these two of his plays, which were butt of a lot of social strife, then became so popular that there was some meeting ground. The third example also is from my favorite writers. He belongs to a generation or two after Tendulkar, and his name is Orhan Pamuk. I'm sure most of you have heard of him. The famous Turkish writer. Turkey, as you know, is a complex country with a long history. A country which is Islamic, but one which tried to adopt to European the secular concepts of modernity and secularism through and by force. A country where democracy survives on the insistence under the auspices of army. You might have read his books, No, which is extremely, which talks about these dynamics army bringing secularism and democracy, where girls are banned from wearing burqa, and because they are banned from wearing burqa, they are not able to go and get education, etc., etc. And then it talks about whether women are better in the USA wearing short skirts, or they are better off in Turkey wearing burqas and all that. So this is the kind of country that he comes from. Pamuk is aware of the importance of traditions and strongly condemns the spiritual hollowness of the materialist capitalist European society. He has said that openly. He has written an article on that. As a secular modernist, he is opposed to Islamic fundamentalism, and which is on the rise in Turkey now, and at the same time, as a nationalist, also takes a stand against the hegemony of the erstwhile communist Soviet Union. At the same time, he also points out the injustices done by the Turkish, his own government, national government, to the Kurdish people in the past and even now, and how such horrible occurrences are brushed under the carpet by the nationalists. As a consequence, he invites the wrath of modern European capitalist democratic society, the so-called democratic nationalist government of Turkey, the army of Turkey, the Islamic fundamentalists, the Russian government, and the left progressive elements. So he is being opposed or targeted by from all the sides. So it is from so many pools that is being targeted, where there is no meeting around, where there is no dialogue at all. To top it all, he gets a Nobel Award when he was already charged by the Turkish government. He was about to go to jail, but gets a Nobel Award, gets out. Now he lives part-time in India. So it's a very kind of, so his I or his identity has been created by these kind of events in his life. In short, the texture of complexity today is different from the past. It is not bipolar between two contradictory elements anymore. It arises out of the framework which has no connection with each other. Either the issues were earlier, the issues were like capitalism versus socialism, the bourgeois versus the proletariat, progressive versus the regressive. Now the contest is on a weird level, like capitalism versus fundamentalism. I remember an election in Bush's time in the US, where the two main issues on which the election was so fought was on the one side whether abortion should be allowed, and on the other hand whether Iraq war was justified or not. Now how do you judge or vote between these two issues? They are not related at all. They are no they are not in competition at all. You just have to, or the elections at our place. Whether jobs are more important or hating Islam is more important. You just have to, if you are somewhat akin to what is happening in Maharashtra politics as of now, where all parties have broken and got realigned. Congress has broken, NCP or National Congress Party has broken, Shiv Sena has broken, and part of them have joined a Republican Party founded by Baba Saheb Ambedkar. As far as I know, has now around 18 branches or 18 Republican parties. Some of them aligned with the Shiv Sena, some of them aligned with BJP, some trying to align themselves with different parties in different elections. What this absurd situation creates, or you can see Ukraine war, or you can see war in Syria. It's so absurd that which party is on which side. Turkey, which started the war against Syria, and against Syria the most successful forces are the Kurdish forces, but Kurdish people are hated by the Turkish people. So they simultaneously are fighting with Syria as well as Kurdish people who are fighting amongst themselves. So this is the multipolar complexity. What this absurd situation creates is anxiety in the mind of the common person. This absurdity gives birth to confusion and feeling of cynicism. then the powers that be can take advantage of this confusion, and especially now with the captivating influence of faceless social media, and fudge the issues even more to suit their ends. The era of what is called post-truth then descends upon us. This is the grey area of today. This is the zeitgeist, as they say, spirit of the times today. How does the experimental theatre, which is supposed to have fresh visions of truth, supposed to function in an era of post-truth? It is bound to face many more problems than what it did in the past. This also produces a kind of ironical situation as far as taking position is concerned. Famous Kannada writer Mr. Anantamurthy has given an example of this in one of his articles. This will answer partly, in part, your question. In short, I paraphrase what he says in one sentence. Anantamurthy writes, I realize that nowadays I take the side of modernity when talking with staunch traditionalists, and I try to stress the importance of traditions when faced with a radical modernist. So, if I meet a modernist, I will have to say that, see, even for breaking traditions, you need to know traditions. Then which traditions? Then these traditions I don't agree, these traditions I agree. Then I go on and on, giving the offenses. Exactly the opposite happens when I face a traditionalist saying that no, modernity is done well. Okay, it has brought in capitalism, it has brought in imperialism, but still modernity, etc., etc., etc. So, this is a very grey area, and I will come to theatre in a little while. Even though the exploitative practices of yesteryears, this is another example that may answer your question a bit. Even though the exploitative practices of yesteryears were no less horrible, it was easy to decide who the exploiter or the enemy was. I mean, in a small village or that वो गांव का पाटिल हमारे यहाँ बोलते हैं, the chief chieftain of the town or the Brahmin of the town goes and rapes the Dalit girl who is the oppressor, who is the oppressed. It is quite clear. Now this grey area, it is not so easy to do so. In one of my plays titled Chowk, that is Crossroads, written by me, deals with such a situation. In the play, one of the characters of age of about 32 is on his way to the work on a new job. But the bus does not come on time, as drivers have refused to take out the buses, as there is a strike of farmers and band on the road. So he has to go to work on his two-wheeler now, which makes him more angry as the petrol prices have gone up due to the war launched by President Bush on Iraq. That's why the prices of oil have gone up. In that angry state of mind, he travels on his two-wheeler. There are many potholes on the road. He skates and hurts himself, and he is not able to go to work for a few days and loses his contractual job. Now the jobs are not permanent. Now who is the responsible? Who is the enemy and who is responsible for him losing the job? The bus driver, the farmers, President Bush, Iraq, Indian government for not keeping oil prices in control, the corrupt elected member of the local body, the corrupt contractor who built the road, capitalism which has introduced the policy of hire and fire, bureaucracy, democracy which has come down to the level of populism and majoritarianism, and who and which policy do I support to fight this? Many questions indeed. This brings about anger which is non-defined, undefinable, which is important, and just anger which is a boiling point all the time. So somebody comes and in that play itself, I will come to that play later. So coming back to theatre, the result of this complexity and fragmentation is that when the world is becoming or coming together and becoming flatter, ironically we see smaller groups liking particular playwright or play rather than any one play getting wider support, like Ghashiram Kotwal. I mean, people like, say, Rajiv Naik's play. There's a group of people who like Rajiv Naik's play. Then there's somebody likes my plays. There's a group likes say Shafat Khan's plays, and dialogue is again the same. Yes, that is good, but you say that is good, but you see that, then you go on giving complex answers to that. So that is how. So now it is Marathi theatre is not producing the kind of theatre like in the 70s, when one play like Gasharam Kotwal would appeal to a large number of people. This creates an impression that no significant or important theatre is being produced at all in Marathi, and this is one of the reasons why the trans-regional exchange in India also, as far as theatre is concerned, has ceased or at least reduced considerably, which I mentioned at the beginning. This situation is more complex in theatre than in the literature, as I find. I also write novels, and I read novels from all over the world. As theatre is a group activity which has to be shared by the audience, dialogues between not only the characters, but there has to be a dialogue between the writer, the director, the actors, and at every dialogue stage there is a complex situation. Secondly, till 1990, I have spoken about prototypes from Europe. Marathi theatre and literature always had European prototypes to follow. I think everywhere in the country. I don't mean that the writers from the 70s plagiarized them, but I am saying that they are prototypes. And for example, Tendulkar's plays were preceded by plays like Cat on Hot Tin Roof and Streetcar Named Desire. Absurd theatre came much before Arekar did. Arekar started writing in the Marathi in Europe. The modernist plays like those of Ibsen had come much before Il Kunchwar. Now the conditions are very different. Playwrights are facing the same socio-political conditions and existential questions nearly world over. The conditions are, and these conditions are in continuous flux, and prototypes become dated very fast. You become obsolete nearly in a year or so. The result of all this, in my opinion, is that the definition of theatricality needs to change if we are to meet these conditions. So what is theatrical? Traditionally, theatre was supposed to be sharply focused with linear progression, with rising tension arising out of unilinear conflict. Living conditions have dramatically changed, but our ideas about what constitutes drama have not. Unless we change our ideas about what is dramatic, theatre will not be able to deal with today's reality. We will go on living in today's reality and do theatre of the past. If not, theatre will be unfit to live and will die a natural death. We will have to accept theatre which is not unilinear. There are of course many possibilities. One of them being that theatre will work more like a collage. Humor always has been an important element or tool in literature or theatre. I think it plays an even more important role today, but its texture needs to change. Black humor or black comedy, straightforward satire will not be able to completely reflect today's grey and complex reality, because there is no one single enemy. Today's humor, in my opinion, should be more non-insistent in a kind of detached, concerned way, though it should be equally effective and more deeply thought-provoking, or more importantly, or most importantly, capable of highlighting the ironies which are the hallmark of contemporary times. I think irony, more than contradiction, is a more ruling element in today's reality. Playwrights have been trying to do so in Marathi, at least over the last 2 decades. Unfortunately, the audiences were not ready to accept this change to start with. Now we do see some change on that side as well. I think we'll talk about a few other playwrights in the evening after when I'm in discussion with someone else. I will come to my own plays now, and so that we can end soon. The play title Te Pode Gele, They Went Ahead. The play that we are about to see is, it's a short play. You might be knowing, you might not be knowing, but everywhere in India there is a farmers' distress. But in states like Maharashtra or Hyderabad or even partly Karnataka, this distress is far more. And nearly 10 farmers on an average every day have been committing suicide for last 30 years. No government is bothered about that. Nothing is happening about that. These farmers are not traditional farmers who go in for say cultivating jawar, bajri or rice or wheat. They are farmers who have changed from their traditional crops to what we call cash crops. That is mainly cotton and sugar cane. Now Maharashtra, like state, is not, most of it is not naturally conducive to these plants. We don't have that kind of rainfall, we don't have that kind of soil. Plus, the inputs are so costly that if there is 1 year of rainfall short and irrigation is very bad, then they go in debt straight away. These farmers are not small farmers who grow jawar for themselves or bajra for themselves or gehu for themselves and eat. And they are very poor, but they can survive. The people who are not able to survive and committing the suicide are people who are trying to change from that old agriculture to this new cash crop capitalist agriculture. I wanted to write about this theme for a long time. This plays from 2007, so already nearly 18 years have passed. But even that time the problem was very, very strong. But what I did not, there have been films, not much of theatre, but there have been the films, novels on this subject. But what happens is that these films or novels start talking about the farmer's woes, that this is the farmer, how he or she takes loans, and how then there is a daughter's wedding and there is no money, and the sharks are the loan sharks are after him, and then he goes and hangs himself or takes poison or whatever. It's a very sad tale. But if you read 20th novel on that, then it remains only a tearjerker. It doesn't reach to why it is happening, how it is happening, and you lose in fact the sensitivity about the problem itself. That is one point. The second point is that I come from a city, I am not a farmer, I don't have any such experience. So writing without a lived experience of this kind, it would be wrong for me to write on this issue. But what is forgotten in all this part is that how is this going on under different governments? Nobody is challenging that. It is because they are not only deprived. They are like J.P. Deshpande used to say all the time, that if somebody is not getting enough, it is not only that somebody is not getting enough, it is because he or she is exploited. There is exploitation in the society. That's why some are getting, some are not getting, etc. This play was sparked off by 2 or 3 instances that happened, in addition to my wish about writing on this issue. What happened on a single day was that day there were 2 news items and 1 advertisement in the same newspaper, one below the other, in 2007. The first news item talked about how many number of billionaires in India had tripled in last year. The second news just below that informed us that how India has slid down in international list on Human Development Index from something like 139 to 176. And the advertisement just below this newspaper had a huge tagline which says, "Ye dil mange more." So this was in the same day, in the same newspaper, on the same. I went out on a two-wheeler in Pune. As we were talking, there is no public transport, so everybody gets on a two-wheeler in the morning and starts driving out. Then he or she thinks where to go. But first you get on a two-wheeler, go out. So I was standing at a crossroad joint and at a red light, and fortunately 2 youths had also stopped at the red light. Otherwise, normally they pass. They stopped and they were talking with each other, and the youth on the pillion seat was telling his partner on the front seat, कुछ भी हो यार, लाइफ में आगे निकलना है. So लाइफ में आगे निकलना है माने कि कहाँ निकलना है? what is exactly meant by life में आगे निकलना है. So that that title of the play itself, वो आगे निकल गए, ते पुढे गेले, वो आगे निकल गए, they went ahead. I won't talk about this play as I think we will be seeing this play. Okay, then I won't talk about it. It's a very surreal play. Happening in a surreal, it uses rape as a metaphor, I'm sorry to say, but it is a fact of life. If you take rape in Marathi or Hindi, it is called balatkar. So balatkar, by sheer, as the name suggests, is done something by force, something by power on someone else. So you treat that as a kind of metaphor, and that play uses that as a metaphor, and it does not talk about a pharmacist's woes directly. What it talks about is the desensitization of the urban folk, the desensitization of middle and higher middle classes, and why this continues happening. If they are not desensitized as much, if they are not exploitative, if they are not really raping or doing balatkar on the other section of the society, this would have stopped long back. So I won't talk about the case play any more. So it is I don't know if it will come in the translation or reading out. It's a very humorous play, very dark humor. It is not black humor, but it's dark humor. Then I have already talked about one of my plays called Choke, the Crossroads. In that play, a crossroad joint is used as a metaphor for a boiling cauldron on the mix of the mixed but divided society in a metropolis. What happens is that there is a traffic jam, as there is traffic jams everywhere on a crossroad, and many people are stuck in that traffic jam. One of them, there is plethora of characters, around 20 of them. One of them is the person who has lost the job. So there is a Varkari in that one of the characters, a typical pilgrim from Bhakti sect in Maharashtra who go on a pilgrimage on the foot every year. He has realized that instead of passing through the city and going ahead on his pilgrimage, staying behind begging for alms is in the city is far more paying than doing the farming. So he has continued to stay there, and he is also caught in the traffic jam and is begging everywhere. There is a Mercedes car. Obviously, a rich couple is sitting in the car. They are on the verge of a divorce. They are totally cut off from from the other sections of the society. So they do not even know what a Varkari is. Naturally and ironically, they are traditionalists, so they have named their children Bhrugudev and Rudradatta, not normal names, Bhrugudev and Rudradatta, but they call them Bruxi and Rudi. Then there are 4 people in the bus near that car, which is also stuck in the jam. One of them is the man who has lost his job, as I described a few minutes back. He is going with an erudite economist. That man has lost job, he has nothing to do. So he goes with this economist to hear his lectures. The economist gives very detailed, he is very erudite, he talks about why Indian economy is doing bad in such complex terms, in such unfathomable terms for the common man, that he just goes on listening like that and feels happy about it, as if his problems are sorted out. And he is especially happy that day, this person who has lost job, because he has read in the newspaper that America has done some criticism on Pakistan and they are going to stop some help. And so this economist tells him that nahi baba, aise nahi hota hai, international politics is very different, you have no reason to be happy, Americans will go on helping Pakistan. So he is angry at the erudite economist also. Then there is a single mother in her late 30s, a widowed mother, worried about reaching home late to her children. There is a man of about 40 who lives in her area and is trying to take advantage of her predicament. There is a scooter nearby, a two-wheeler. This is a socialist and a communist pair on scooter. They are in the 35 or 40 years old. They are on the way to see a film in the Festival of Iranian Women Film Directors in the archives, and they are fighting with each other all the time. There is a young woman in an auto rickshaw who has done post-graduation and PhD in product design from IIT, and being so over qualified, she is unemployable in India. So she has found out a way by trying to work with local craftsmen to produce some exotic products which can be sold outside. But she has no connect with these craftsmen. So she needs an old committed lady social worker who is also accompanying her, associated with the local craftsman. She is also in the auto rickshaw. But she then also needs and the finance to produce this. So she has located a person from that community, Tambat, who work with Tamba, who Adivasi person who has managed to get educated and lives in USA and now wants to fund something, some ethnic product to be produced and sold there. This rickshaw driver is a Muslim person. So, and she being IIT graduate and all that is very much Hindutva kind of a thing, and she is very much afraid of being caught in the traffic jam with a Muslim rickshaw driver. She talks to him throughout the play in Hindi, and the rickshaw driver answers her in Marathi. So she is all the time telling that the social worker, don't say too much, he is a Muslim and all that. Now, and the period when this traffic jam has happened is between two identity riots. So we are already in a very boiling kind of a condition. There is a young student from Bihar. As all of you know, we hate Biharis and UP people who come there, and we want all of them out, and Maharashtra will obviously go down if they go out. I mean, there will be nobody to end work. But the student is there, and there is a policeman is there who is trying to sort out the traffic jam. Now everybody is angry with the policeman, but he is not able to do anything. He tries to contact the local police station. The local police station says that go contact the main police station, etc., etc. He tries that for 10 minutes and then says this department is horrible, they are all bastards and all that. So he is already angry. What happens is that he sees this Bihari student looking from behind inside that car, and he thinks that he is a thief. So he catches him. There is a backpack on his back, and he says that what is in the backpack. The student is arrogant. He says that there is no bomb. Don't worry. So immediately he flares up, and he starts hitting him, beating him. He takes the backpack out. Everybody else comes out. This, especially the socialist worker, that old woman comes out of the rickshaw and stops him from beating him. In the meantime, he is able to find out this small chakku from his, knife from his backpack, and see this. This is what is he is carrying person from Bihar, and all this starts a riot in that traffic jam, and it goes on and on, etc. There is Uttradhar also. He comes in, he is taking a random social sample, doing some survey for some social organization or a political organization. So he goes to every person and asks him or her, who are you, and what do you do, how much do you earn, why are you here, etc., etc. And we come to know about each character, and at that time, that person says that yes, I am this but not that, and this but not that, etc., etc., etc. And so Uttradhar all the time is talking about that. So this is the second play that I would like to talk about. I have been haunted by changes in technology and the pace at which it is changing. We talk about that all the time. But my first play, in fact, I try to deal with philosophy of technology, which I think is extremely important, especially after AI is coming now. In my first play, which was written in 1986, that was my first full-length play. It was called Charshe Koti Visar Boye, 4 Billion Forgetfuls. The idea is that I have given the copy here, whenever you want. That copy is not from 1986. It was produced in 1986. That was the first production. This video is of the third production done by Mohit Takarkar in around 2009. But he is not the first production done at that time. In 1986, there was obviously no internet, no PCs, no mobiles, no e-banking, nothing like that. But the whole idea of the play is that when a person is born, anybody, man or woman, there is no death anymore. The world has progressed so much. We are living in 3085, not 1985, but 3985, 2000 years after, and there is no death anymore, no natural death, no death by illness, no death by accident even. You can change all the body parts, etc., etc., etc. And so when a person is born, he or she is given, say, 50 years of life and free education. Because we don't want to increase the population of the world, so it is to be frozen at 4 billion. Somebody has found out that that's the optimum population that can sustain on the resources of the world. And so then that person goes on, gets education, goes on working, and then what does he earn? He earns a lifespan. I mean, I serve for somebody, my salary is 30 days. So I work for 30 days, my lifespan increases by 30 days, or 60 days, or 80 days, etc., etc., etc. So, in short, if I want to live eternally, I have to save 1 day every day. That should be my saving. I can go on living eternally. So obviously you can imagine what sort of greed and horrible competition, rat race would. I mean that's a metaphor of what is happening in capitalism or late capitalism. So there is a very big businessman who has millions of years under his bed now, very deep pockets as we were talking. And his peon or he is dying regularly after say 20 years. So 20th generation of his peon is working for him now, etc., etc., etc. But he is not happy with that. He wants more. He is more greedy. This is not enough. So what he says that, okay, the best thing to do is to ask. He calls the scientist and calls a major bureaucrat, and he says that I want to manipulate the computer that regulates, this centralized computer that regulates all this. So he wants to become immortal. And right at the beginning of the play, there are two immortal characters from our mythology, Maruti and Ashwatthama, who are seen. And they are so bored being immortals that they are just playing Ludo or playing solitaire or whatever with each other. They live in Himalayas, play solitaire. Then they say that okay, after every 200 years we'll come and meet and see what has happened, etc. And then Narad comes in, and being a Kailave, I mean he is the person who brings in fights. No, I mean he is all the time a very naughty guy. So he comes in and tells Maruti and Ashwatthama that see, now you don't need to play Ludo, you are immortal, so you are the richest people now. You have infinite capital. Now see what this businessman is doing. And now you can play a game with him which will be something like the war of Mahabharata. And then the war ensues. It's a very funny war. I won't go in that entire story. What happens at the end, I will request you to see the play itself. In my last play, Prasthan Urf Exit, it is in a sense not an answer, but a kind of a response to Sartre's play, No Exit. So this is Exit. So when he says that freedom is a burden placed on us, freedom is something that we have to carry. We are born free and we have to continue doing that. This play talks about that yes, okay, if freedom is what we are born with, and existence and freedom are what are most important things, what about loneliness in today's world? And what happens is that this play is about two very old people in their 80s, and Yamaduta comes in. One of them is supposed to die, but Yamaduta has an app installed by Yama, and his app malfunctions. his app is showing that the woman should die, but actually it is the man who is dead. So he is not able to take that man, and the man says, no, take her, she is dead, I can't come with you. And they have conversation. There are four monologues, two monologues of a man, two monologues of a woman. After some time, his app gets corrected and starts showing that not the woman but the man is dead, but by the time it's a woman is dead actually. So the man gets up, and the man is a very right-wing, typical bureaucrat who says that this is the greatest times, we should have given power to the army long time back, but at least now it has gone to the fascist, etc., etc., etc. And the woman is a leftist who says that he didn't even know the word of fascism. He only used to say that he should be given to the army. He has come to understand the meaning of the word of fascism and has started cherishing it from 2014 onwards, etc., etc. And both these guys are not doing anything. They are only talking. I mean, all their lives they have not done anything, left or right. They have only talked, and they are living happily, a very happy high middle class or middle class life, and they are actually playing a game. And the man quotes Hitler, the woman quotes Churchill all the time, and says our life is absurd, our life has no meaning. Why are we living? It is such an insipid life that we have lived. They know that, they say that it is a very insipid life. So, and life has been absurd. So when was there, ironically, when was it thought that life is so very vigorous and we should be ready to fight and die? Ironically, it was in the Second World War. That time life seemed so precious, you were ready to kill lakhs of people. Two man and woman meeting after a war, some Russian soldier meeting a woman in Paris and having an affair. I mean, that is life that we should have. Something like that is needed for life to be vigorous, etc., etc. So I have given that play also. If you're interested, you can go and watch that play. It's a very humorous play again. Anyway, but all these writers, I will talk about other writers also. I won't be. It won't be only about myself. There's an additional problem which I cannot avoid talking about. The most important aspect which afflicts theatre today is fear in capital F. Maharashtra is one of those few states where the Censorship Act of 1876 from colonial era is still operative. Is it operative here? I don't know. It is operative here. Okay. In addition to that, we have to take police permission for every show. So the police have to be read out the script. Two policemen come, listen to your script, and say that yes, it is okay to. There is no law and order problem there. Is this here?
Act is here, but it is not functional like this.
No, it is very functional. We have to keep 2 seats vacant for every show.
Yeah.
That the censor board people, yeah.
The rule is here.
But the policeman or he can come there. I mean, they do. Now, in addition to that, at least in the colonial era, as well as in the first few years after independence, there was at least no extra constitutional censorship, that we all know by the Henas and Dals and groups and organizations. But it's very interesting to note. You must have heard about our Marathi writer P.L.D. Deshpande. P.L.D. Deshpande is a very popular humorist writer. But he also used to write socially conscious plays, and he used to write for the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party which had come out of the Congress Party, which had a fight with the Communist Party. They were, though on the left, obviously the Socialists and Communists have their own huge fights. So he wrote a play for a communist, for a socialist theatre group, which was formed by Sani Guruji, etc., etc. And the title of the play was Pudhari Paije. We need a leader. So what happened was that Makarand Sathe, you might have heard, a communist writer, a very major communist Kamgar writer in 1950s or 1960s. They obviously did not like this play. They did not go and blacken or beat up P.L.D. Deshpande. He wrote a play saying, Pudhari Meala, we got a leader. So this has been happening for a long time, and there was a play called Sharada in colonial times. It was about freedom of women and against child marriages and all that. When it came about, there was even the so-called traditionalists and all that. They did not go and beat up the writer. There were 25 plays which said that no women had to be married at the age of 5. So both the parties answered play by play for play, article for article. Now it is impossible. Just last year, I teach at Pune University as a guest lecturer in our theatre department. Those students staged a play which you might have heard about it. Yes, you have heard. It is a typical take from folk form where Sita and Ram are being played by two actors, and in the wing, Sita is also played by a male actor. So in the wing, this Sita is smoking a cigarette and he is saying, "Ye benchu Ram kaha gaya?" So I mean these actors are talking almost actors. These students were beaten up. The faculty, the head of the department and these students were taken immediately to the police station. We got calls saying that please don't come because this will get more blown up. So the teachers, now they are exploring who teaches there. So now just few months back I had to give my biodata, my place. So it is going to that extent now. So now it is virtually self-censorship, which is the worst form. That I think twice whether I should write this or not, because what will happen to me. But now after this serious discourse, let me come to the funny and absurd side of this. And this is the real, this is most importantly affecting, as you can understand, experimental theatre. Because experimental theatre by definition is a theatre which has new vision, which is full of new ideas, which goes against the old ones, the established ones, and the establishment itself. So experimental theatre by definition is anti-establishment. So it is affecting anti-establishment experimental theatre most. But now after all this serious discourse, let me come to the funny and absurd side of this. And that is related not to the present but to the future. And because the rate of change of technology is so fast that this future is nearly our present. The point is this: the combination of the new technology of artificial intelligence that is at our doorsteps and the loneliness that humans are facing today, as I told you about in my last play, humans are facing today, is going to change the reality so drastically that we can't even imagine what the reality is going to be like in few years or in few days. I am of the opinion that humans have not really seen any rupture till today. In human history, there has never been the real rupture. I don't think that even the onset of enlightenment or what we call prabodhan or whatever modernity was not a rupture. The change, howsoever drastic it may seem, was brought about over a substantially large period. Now it is going to happen so fast that even 10-year-old children are going to find it difficult to adjust and so will feel obsolete. I mean, now we feel, in that play itself, Exit, Yamaduta tells the old man that, okay, see, you are also tired, I am also tired. I am waiting here for you to die, then he dies, then she to die and you die, etc., etc. So the easiest way out is that why don't you download this app on your mobile? That will sort out the problems. The old man gets extremely angry and he says that fuck your technology. He throws the mobile at him and says that I am not going to learn anything now. In my childhood, I learned from my elders. Now I am learning from my children. All my life I have been learning and doing nothing else. And it is changing so fast that really now 30-year-olds are looking to 20 years old to sort out the technological problems. The language is changing so fast. I mean, I read a student has come to me, he has got some scholarship or fellowship. Your language is changing so fast. and I am supposed to be the mentor of that scholarship holder. He is supposed to write a play, and now he is not able to write Marathi and all that. That's a different story. He has written it in Roman script and all that, and he is talking about some electricity plant and how pollution is there, etc., etc. And a character in that, and he writes BC, that is backward class or water, cannot breathe in this air. Now suddenly I did not understand that why BC, I mean why Brahmins are able to breathe this air, etc. And there was no connection in the earlier sentence or in the later sentence at all. So I was not able to understand at all. So I asked him when I met him, what is this BC is not BC not able to breathe? He says it's not BC like backward class. BC in our language is a venture. So these kind of see the changes every day that are happening even in language. I mean, once Tendulkar told me that you are writing plays that are BA ahead, you will be understood after 20 years. I told him, sir, that no Marathi will be left, no theatre will be left. What is going to be going to 20 years? We are seeing everything is getting obsolete so fast that it is changing. I was talking about changing of definition of theatre, of unilaterality, of theatre working like a sword, piercing and everything and all that. Now the definitions of what is human, what is culture, what is society is going to change. I mean, I just a few days back I had a huge fight because I mean, I have a daughter who is 31 years old. She is a lawyer. She is staying here now doing a PhD. And out of 22 of her friends, 19 are not married, same age. 2, and they don't want to marry. 2 are married but divorced. Only 1 is married. So I was talking to my friend, telling him that there is going to be law, and I have only one daughter. Most of the families now have 1 son, 1 daughter. Again, most of them are living abroad. So I think this loneliness is going to be a huge problem. He said, there is no problem now. Because AI will take over. Pets are going to take over. Pets are being bred now for giving companionship to humans. There was a statistics just last month that 40% of South people in the South Europe live single in a house. I mean, a single person lives in a home. 40% of South Europeans are living like that. So what is dialogue then? What is theatre then? What is good? And he was telling me that this is not to worry. He can have a pet. He can have an AI, etc., etc., etc. I have written a short story on that also. I will come to that later sometime. So human life. Some writers are writing dystopian tales about it. But I think it is futile task because this change is going to be so drastic that even the definition of dystopia will have to change. And so the question whether to change, whether the change will be for the good or for the bad will have lost meaning. Funny, I would say. So what was the point of me talking for last hour or so with such a seriousness? None. Human life and has always been absurd. But I want meaning for my life, so I try to give it and I try to do theatre. Coming back to the present state, which was going to last for a few more years or days, I don't know. This is how I see Marathi theatre today. It is evident that it is confused and struggling on some level. However, that does not mean that it is totally bereft of important ideas. Youth is getting attracted to theatre, Marathi theatre again. Audiences have started to appreciate the experiments required to meet the changed conditions to a certain extent. These plays are trying to deal with complex reality of the day, which is very difficult indeed, albeit the number of such plays is limited. But on the other hand, the number of excellent plays in any era is always limited. How many really good plays were staged in one decade, even the golden period that we were talking about of 70s, 8, 10 in a year? If you take Europe, how many good active playwrights are there today in a country like UK, France or Germany? 8 or 10? I doubt if the number is that large. The forest looks much dense than it actually is when you're seen from a distance. This is the biggest problem regarding talking about contemporary history and what Hans said. Thank you very much. I think we can take the questions and all in the
Yeah, later.
earlier.
Have a 2 minutes break and then